Welcome to BossUp Babes, helping babes show up, boss up, and thrive. With #1 best-selling author, global influencer, and ultimate boss babe, Karissa Adkins. Karissa is a health and wellness expert and CEO of the 365 Daily Hustle, here to help mompreneurs and career-focused women boss up and reclaim their healthiest life. She is a pro at cutting through the BS and inspiring massive breakthroughs that help women create healthy routines and habits that facilitate personal and professional growth. Are you ready to reclaim your best life, take action, and be a badass boss babe? Let's get to it.
Everyone, welcome to another awesome episode of BossUp Babes. I am your host, Karissa Adkins, the #1 mindset and women's health expert. I want you to grab your pen, your paper, because today we're talking strategies, tips, and helpful hacks to help you kind of get through grief and how you can find purpose after that pain. Okay, guys. So definitely grab a place where you can take some notes if you can, or your phone. And I just invite you to really listen to this story. And if you're going through anything, like what we talk about today, just don't be afraid to reach out. Because just know you're not alone. So before I bring on my amazing guest, because I do have a guest today, I want to tell you a little story about a time that I lost my best friend and my mom. And I tell this story not to make anyone sad, right? But to show you how you can turn that pain into purpose after you lose someone or something. Maybe it's a dog. And we're not just talking a person, right? Like you can grieve over anything that happens to you. So today I just kind of want to just share a little story about my mom. So my mom, Glenda Epperson, she was an amazing woman. And at 44 years old, she was diagnosed with cancer. And she was not very healthy at all, right? You guys, if you've heard my health story before, my journey, I was following her same path. And I've mentioned her multiple times because she is one of the reasons why I do the work that I do today. So back when she was 44 years old, my son was just born at the time she was diagnosed with cancer. And I've always known my mom to be a fighter, right? She's always been a fighter and a hustler and a hard worker. Like I learned so many amazing lessons from my mom. Like I said, she was my best friend, not just because she was my mom, but because we worked alongside of each other for so many years. She was an entrepreneur. I learned so many amazing, valuable lessons from my mom. And I loved her, right? I absolutely loved her. And so kind of to fast forward, around 54 years old, so almost, 10 years later after her very first diagnosis with breast cancer, we were stationed in Germany getting ready to fly home. And because we had done our 3-year tour there, we were getting ready to come back to Nebraska. We happened to get orders back to where I'm from, back where mom was, and I was like, oh my God, this is just going to be amazing. I'm going to go right back into working with her, producing bridal shows with her, working alongside her. Like, oh, it's just going to be so great, right? My best friend. And the day we moved back, or the day we got back into the States, we went to North Carolina. And at the time, that was my husband's, that's where my husband's parents were from. So we stopped in to, spend some time with them before driving back to Nebraska. But about 5 days into that trip, right? We had about 2 weeks there, about 5 days into North Carolina. I took a call from my mom and she just did not sound right? She just sounded ran down. She sounded tired. She's like, I think I'm going to go to the hospital and just get checked out just to make sure. But Karissa, there's nothing to be alarmed about. Like, it's all good. Right. And that's the beautiful part about moms is they're always there to like reassure you that everything's going to be okay. And mom did that. But I got off the phone and my gut and my heart were telling me something different, right? My mom was saying something, my gut and my heart were telling me another. And So I looked at my husband at the time, and I said, I think we need to go, right? Like, I don't think everything's right. I think we need to go home. I think I need to get there, and I need to get there now. And I looked at all the flights, and nothing could get me home faster than we could just literally pack up the car and go. It's about a 2-day drive. And so he's like, okay, yeah, like, let's do it. Right. Like, if it's, like, I support you, let's go. So we get in the car and we get to St. Louis, which is about 12 hours from North Carolina. And I take a call, and it's my sister, and they're in the hospital with my mom. And she says, Karissa, we're here with Ben, and we're here with Gary, who's my mom's best friend. And they're like, it's not looking good. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Right. Like, I'm like, I'm trying to get there. What's going on? Why has nobody told me? I was kind of angry that, nobody had kind of said anything to me. She's like, no, seriously, Karissa, like, it's not good, right? She's actually like on a machine breathing now for her. And I was just like, all right, my whole world came crashing down that day. And if you're watching this, whether it's on Roku or on the Motivation Success app, I have this clock on my arm, right? And the story with this clock is that this was the hardest decision I've ever had to make, y'all. Because, right, at that time, we pulled off at the side of the road, and we were at a gas station because I just couldn't take this call while we were driving, right? I needed my space. I needed to get out of the car. And I said my goodbyes. And as her PR of her estate, I had to be the one to make the call, to officially let her go. One of the hardest decisions, y'all, that I have ever had to make. However, I then had to go into mom mode, right? For my siblings, for my kids, for everyone. And I went automatically into like protective mode, mom mode, like, we got to get there. I got to plan a funeral, like all of these things, you guys. And I didn't really give myself the time to grieve. Okay. I did not I didn't even put myself in that position yet. But I tell you this story I'll finish this, and I'm going to bring my guest on. I tell you that story, you guys, because that moment could have destroyed me, right? It could have very much been the moment that said, Karissa, you're going to go right down the dark path that you were literally just coming out of. Because 2 years prior, I had decided that I was going to get healthy, and that I was no longer going to live with sickness and obesity and, diseases festering in my body. Like, my mom was the reason why I decided to change my life. And then when she died, the day she died, I promised myself that I would continue this mission that I am on to show my kids, what health looks like, so that they would never have to go through the pain that I was experiencing. So I turned that pain into my power. And that's what got me through the funeral. That's what got me through, designing all the flowers. That's what even got me into the next 10 years of my life. And that is what got me here today. So I say all of that to you to tell you that you can do hard things. You can turn your pain into power. And there are ways that you can cope and and get through these moments of toughness. So with that, today, I have brought to you an amazing special guest. Her name is Bre. She's an independent, hardworking single mama who hit absolutely rock bottom more than once after losing someone very, very important in her life. She is a woman who never gives, and she's always pushing forward. A few words that describe this beautiful queen are ambitious, determined, kind, strong, and just, to me, she is a beautiful soul, right? Everyone she talks to, when she talks to me, she lights my soul up. So with that, Bre, welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I got real a little bit. I've actually never told that story on a major public platform like that. It felt good. But yeah, now I want to know, right? Like, the woman who's hit rock bottom and who's come back stronger. Tell us and all the listeners a little bit about maybe your first time that you hit rock bottom.
Yeah. So my first time hitting rock bottom was definitely when I was 21. I had a 3-month-old baby, and I unexpectedly lost my fiancé in a freak accident. He was a type 1 diabetic. He got diagnosed very late in life. He's 21. He just didn't know how to take care of himself. He was busy. He owned his own business. He was just always on the go, and he just didn't prioritize his health. And so that ended up, unfortunately, leading us to where we were. His numbers were super high. He raced sprint cars. So it was hot. It's end of May. He was out working. He went and test fired his car up that night. He was coming up a friend's driveway in the car, had his helmet on and everything, but that was the only safety device he had on. And he went into a diabetic coma pretty much, lost control of the car and ran it into a rock retaining wall and basically went on impact. I got a call. I was at a softball game coaching high schoolers, and my watch just kept going off and from different people. And I was like, what is going on? And I was like, I got to figure out what's going on. And I had my daughter with me. Thankfully I had her with me. But I took the call, and they said, I'll never forget the words, Jimmy was in an accident and it's not good. And I lost it right there. And the amount of people though, that all of the girls' parents and stuff, like the support I had right off the bat was crazy. You know, they're like, do you want us to take your dog? Like, you know, and I'm just freaking out. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, let me just get to the hospital. Cause I had no idea how bad it was. He was already gone before they had even gone to the hospital, you know, but nobody had told me that. And so I'm walking into the hospital still thinking that he's here and his dad's on the other side of the sliding glass doors. And I walk in, and the only thing he could say to me was, he's gone. And I'm pretty sure the entire hospital probably heard me yell.
Yeah.
And that was definitely my rock bottom. I couldn't even say the words of like, he died when I was calling my parents. You know, it's by this time it's 9:00 at night, and I'm trying to, you know, think of who do I call? What do I do? Like, I'm like, my whole entire world is flipped upside down. I have a 3-month-old. We have a house. Like, he has a business. You know, I was still on maternity leave. I was supposed to go back 3 days after the accident. And I'm like, all of these things are rushing through my head, sitting in this, you know, emergency room. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm 21. Like, you know, I'm like, holy cow. And I couldn't even put the words together. All I could say was, he's gone. And people were like, what do you mean? And like, I literally couldn't even, you know, just accept at that point that he was gone. And so, yeah, that was definitely my start of my rock bottom path there.
And you say that like that's the start, right? Because I think a lot of women, we hit this moment where we're like, wow, I don't even know how to come back from this. But tell us about that next rock bottom. It wasn't that far after that, right?
Yeah, it just things kept spiraling downwards. I mean, I pretty much went into denial for about 10 months. Yeah. It didn't hit me until the first set of holidays which was Thanksgiving. So he passed away May 22nd. And I didn't even hit the grieving process until the end of November, because I just didn't want to believe it. And I just kept going with life, and I had struggles with work. My work was not supportive. So I quit my job 2 weeks after he passed away and started a new job. I had to sell our house. You know, I was like, financially, I don't know how to do this. And memory wise, I don't know how to do this. We bought it, you know, we redid the entire house for us. You know, I was like, I can't imagine having memories here without him. So that whole summer was just an entire blur. I switched jobs. I was, you know, trying to figure out how to be a single mom. What do I do with my kid? You know, like we hadn't figured out daycare yet or any of that kind of stuff. So starting a new job, figuring out where to live and what I could afford at that time, you know, how I was going to make all of these ends meet and what I was going to do with his business. You know, he was in business for 3 years, and I'm like, well, what do I do with a lawn care company? You know, and I'm over here trying to run it, and his clients are, you know, they're like, are you guys going to be able to, you know, and I'm like trying to manage all of these things and, you know, tell these 2 employees what to do. And, you know, they're just like, you're a girl, you know, and so I faced that kind of battle too, of pushback from them. They acted like I had no idea what I was doing. And you know, there's, granted a handful of things I didn't know how to do, but I was his back end of his business. And so I did manage all of that stuff already. So I kind of had an idea, you know, and so it was making my life even more stressful of having employees that couldn't listen to me. You know, they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. And there's nothing more frustrating than someone basically trying to tell you, you don't know what you're doing because you're a girl.
I know.
I think drives me crazier.
Yeah, girl, I feel you. Like when I worked in the collision center, they're like, what do you know about like collision? And I'm like, I don't actually, but that's why we have a team for that, right? Like I know how to
Yeah.
work it. I don't know. I can't tell you how to change your oil even, right? Like, but
Right.
get people in and they're like, no, we actually want to talk to the mechanics. And I'm like, my estimator is the one who wrote your, like she knows everything, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm literally just telling you
yeah.
what the professional already told me, I can relate that information to you.
So I want to go back to the grief process because I know a lot of people, this is obviously a subject that everyone has been hit by, whether again, it's a pet, a person, a close loved one. Some people work really hard on like a specific project or a business. And then all of a sudden, like people felt grief and COVID when COVID hit and their businesses went out of it. Like, so there's no right or wrong, you guys. We're not talking just about specific like people, but everyone does grieve a little different. And you had mentioned, it took you about 9 months to kind of like come to reality. What would be looking back now? How did you process it all? How did you get through it all? And how are you so strong coming out of it?
The first thing I did was I went to therapy. And I'm a strong believer in therapy. I've recommended so many people to my therapist. He is my best friend still to this day, 4 years later. Never in my life did I think I'd be besties with a 70-year-old man, and tell him like every detail of my life, but I do. He is phenomenal. And, besides my daughter, like having a reason that I had to wake up every single day, because I had postpartum depression very, very bad before Jimmy had passed away. I was already struggling with that, very highly. It was very, very rough. So I was already struggling mentally prior to, having to deal with grief and your whole life turning upside down at 21. But therapy was literally what got me through it. The amount of working through those emotions is so important. There was emotions I didn't even know that I was holding on to until we would do a certain exercise. So I wrote Jimmy letters. I wrote him letters throughout different stages. There were things I was mad at him for. We were struggling in our relationship. He lost his mom 6 months before he passed away. And that was his best friend. And he went off the deep end, in the same way. But I hadn't gone through that. So I had no idea how to manage that, how to help him, how to do any of that stuff when he was there. And I was also struggling postpartum wise. And so we were at rock bottom in our relationship as well. And so there were things that I was holding on to resentment wise, anger wise, that I needed to learn how to process outside of just losing him, physically. So writing those letters, was able to let me get my feelings out somehow. And then I went to the cemetery and I, read them to him. And then I burned them and I let go of all of that I was holding on to, because you have to move forward at some point. And in my situation, it was harder or different for me due to the fact he was my fiancé and I had a kid with him. And, I had my whole life planned out, 24 hours prior to him passing away. And then it was all gone. And so just being able to let go of that and realize that I do have to move on and I will be with somebody else one day. And, my life will be where I want it to be one day. I can't let this hold me at, a ground level when I want so much more in life.
Yeah.
So therapy was huge. And then my therapist actually recommended a book that I have recommended to other people as well. It's How to Survive the Loss of a Loved One. And it's an easy read. It's just like little poems. But there's just little phrases in there that make you like think internally on your own and, and be like, what feelings do I have? Or how does that make me feel? And so it was just a good book that wasn't all negative. It added like positivity into a terrible situation. And I think people don't often think that they're like, how can you see a positive in something that's so horrible? And it's just how you have to change your mindset and like your growth and realize. And like you had mentioned, I lost my dad in November of last year. but I've already grieved. And, you know, some people would be like, how do you get over your dad? And, you know, in a couple of months, but everything that I went through 4 years ago was able to allow me to not struggle and not, you know, not hit rock bottom again and lose everything that I've worked for the past 4 years, because I could have easily done that and just let that destroy me.
And I want to just like point out to our listeners here real quick, because you gave so many golden nuggets, and I don't know if you even like heard them, right? Like that's a beautiful part about conversation. That's why I do these shows, is like, there's so much wisdom in this. And if women can like see between the lines of like really what you said here. So, and there's no right or wrong way to grieve, y'all. Like you could be
Absolutely
angry at the world, right? Like it's okay. Like I give you permission to just feel all the feels, do all the stuff. And then, but you, at one point you have to start to get out of it. You absolutely do. So what she said, you guys, if you're writing any of these tips down, is one, therapy, right? And not necessarily, you don't have to work with a therapist, but when you think of like therapy, coaches, mentors, she got help, right? She realized she did not have to go through this process alone, because she didn't need to do it alone. And she recognized that like, I can't do this alone. So whether it's a therapist or you go out and get a coach or you ask for a mentor, it doesn't matter what you're grieving about, like asking for help is the biggest, you know, like thing where you got to put your ego aside and just say, I'm at the lowest of low. I need help here. And I need help now. Right. So that's number one. The sneaky thing she got in there that I caught was, she's like, I had to remember my why, right? She said, I had a little girl to live for. And so many women get stuck in this like black hole, and they forget what, you know, like what they have on the outside of the hole, right? As our kids, our businesses, our, you know, other family members, right? Maybe you lost your partner, but damn, you have all other people, you know, that you still have to like live for and thrive for. So figure out your why. If you're going through something like that, that was immediately, I did the switch, right? I told you that in my very first story. It's like, I had to like spin it around and find the positive in losing my best friend, losing my mom. And I was like, wow, okay. So she was the reason why I wanted to start losing weight to begin with. I didn't want to be like her, even though I loved her to death, but dang, now I'm going to make her like the reason why I'm going to keep going. Right. Cause I'm like, man, reality check, right? Like if I don't continue to go and continue to get healthy, that's where I'll be. The third thing that she mentioned was that she needed to work through those emotions. She needed to process them. She needed to get them out on paper, and she needed to let them go. There's power in giving yourself permission to let go of those emotions. As a mindset coach, when I'm on these retreats with my clients, you know, the very first thing we do is we get those emotions that have been stored in your body's blueprint forever. Like we've been carrying around this baggage a long time, right? Like anger, sadness, shame, guilt, fear, right? These are negative emotions, resentment. They get stored in your body. And if they are stored in your body for so long, they turn into disease, right? I'm not going to get into the science of like, oh, if you hold a lot of anger, it turns into this. And if you hold a lot of sadness, it turns into this. But there's scientific, like proven, like reasons saying like, if you store those emotions in your body, they will eventually fester and they will turn into disease. Okay. So I love that she got rid of that out of her body, and it didn't take her 20 years to do it. And then the fourth thing she mentioned was, she mentioned the book, right? But I'm going to throw in there as personal development, because reading, podcasts, listening, like anything that gets you to see different perspectives and to kind of like take time to journal and write on things, self-awareness, that's personal development, y'all. So if you're going something that's really, really tough, you know, get the help, figure out your why, work through the emotions, and use a professional if you need to on the emotions to let go. But then, you know, like get into something where you can read or you can listen to and kind of start to shift your mindset, shift your perspective on the thing. So good. Brianna, you like literally like ball dropped every single major thing. So we have a couple of minutes left. What piece of advice would you give someone going through a tough process like this? Besides all the tips you gave them, but like from your heart and soul, what would you tell a woman who's listening today, maybe going through what you went through?
I think, I always tell people like never give up. And I know that's something I think everybody, it's such a common like thrown out there, but really like don't give up, but not just like on life, but don't give up on yourself. Everything always comes back to like us and how we choose to handle things, and how we can get ourselves through things. Nobody else is going to change our outcome if we can't change it for ourselves. And that's just something I have to continue to remind myself of, is to not give up. Life's hard, whether it's grief, financials, relationship struggles. Like every single person is dealing with some sort of struggle in their life, but it turns down to how you handle it. Two people can be going through the same situation, and they could have two separate outcomes because one person chose to handle it in a different way. And 4 years ago, I would have been that person that's choosing to handle it in the wrong way. And that was denial. I was in denial for months. And now I lost my dad, and I was angry at my dad. We lost my dad to suicide, very unexpected. And I was mad. I was very, very mad, but I took everything I've learned and everything that has helped me, and I used that to push through and get that anger out, and not allow any of that to hold me back. I didn't give up. I didn't give up when it came to my daughter, my mom. I have a sister, we were all struggling, and we all handled grief very differently too. Just like you said, everybody does handle it differently, but the communication and the talks and, the positivity that I feel that I gave out in the situation helped us all family wise and, strength wise. Even with my friends are like, I'm so sorry. Everybody just feels like they can only say, I'm so sorry in one of these situations. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, I'm actually good. And the first time I was able to say that to somebody when they asked me how I was, felt so good that I wasn't in this negative, so sad, drunk down, mindset. I was good. I'm like, it's life. It happens. Somebody else is going through what I'm going through. And I just want to be able to help other people go through what I've gone through and be able to come out with a positive impact at the end, instead of, wasting years of their life being drugged down by something that happened to them.
I love that. Never give up, always fight. Such amazing words, like so simple, yet like so to the core, right? Like just never give up, right? Like keep fighting for what you want. And I loved what you said is like, just like everything that you went through with the first go around helped you get through the second go around. And I love that you can look back at that and say that, and probably eventually, maybe one day, if you haven't already, like almost be thankful for that moment, because losing a parent is just as hard as losing a spouse and a child and anything like that. But I do love that. And everyone grieves differently. Gosh, I didn't grieve for like a long time, if you will, right? Because I went into that mom mode. Yeah. But it's looking back, when people ask like, how did you get through it? I'm like, honestly, I started a business, right? Like, I remember going through all of mom's stuff, right? Because like the PR, right? And I had just come back from Germany. And so all my siblings were like, Karissa, like, you're the one who don't have a job. Why don't you go through all of mom's stuff? And I'm like, oh, so it's just on me, right? I got dumped on, which is fine. But I did have the time. The reality is I didn't have a job yet. I was just staying at my mom's house so that I could take care of all her stuff. But yeah, that's how I grieved, y'all. Like I found an old ledger and going through all of her stuff, right? You have to find all the stuff and like the wills and you're searching for things. And I found the ledger, y'all. And I remember thinking, this is my next step, right? I don't know anything about starting a business, but I found a ledger, which was a sign that says, Karissa, you may not be working for mom, but you can sure as shit go out and like make mom proud, right? So I started my very first business with nothing but like an idea and a passion. And you guys, it doesn't matter. Yeah, like it doesn't matter what everyone's grief looks different. You do you, right? It's your race, your pace. And I just thank you so much for your time. So, okay, I know we didn't really get a chance to chat about this, but what do you, I know, and it really has nothing to do with grief, but what do you do and how can people find you if they like have questions for you? What do you do?
So I'm currently a real estate agent in Omaha, Nebraska. So if anybody needs a house or a rental or anything, this real estate spectrum is very large. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is Bre.Deacon. So it's Bre.Deacon, Deacon.
Perfect. Y'all go out and find her. At least if you listen to this episode, go out and say what amazing woman she is. Cause like, it's tough, right? And she did it all in a short span. And girl, you're an inspiration. Thank you so much for your time today. I've loved having you on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I am very excited. So can't wait.
Love it. Beautiful. Cool. Well, you guys join me next week for another powerful episode of Boss Up Babes. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to Boss Up Babes with Karissa Adkins, bringing you tangible tips and expert coaching advice to help you boss up and get healthy. Tune in every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com for interviews with industry leaders and powerhouse boss babes that will empower you to take action and live your best life. If you're ready to boss up and work with Karissa in one of her transformative group coaching programs, visit 365dailyhustle.com.